So at this point, music venues are still trying to recover from the pandemic. But as they recover, they gotta deal with a new challenge, which is that even though Gen Z is still going to concerts, this generation of young people is drinking less. Today on the show, how are music venues gonna make this work? I'm Elamin Abdelmahmoud. This is Commotion. I think there's only one way to kick this off, right?
I was looking for some action, but all I found was cigarettes and alcohol.
That's Oasis. The song is Cigarettes and Alcohol. The song is only from 1994, but it sounds old-fashioned even now, right? Like there was a time when smoking and drinking were just like an assumed part of the concert experience. But times slowly changed. First, smoking was banned in most indoor concert venues in North America. But what's interesting here is that lately, alcohol is playing a much smaller role too. Recent studies have shown that Gen Z, people 25 and younger, are drinking significantly less than previous generations. And listen, if you run a live music venue, that's important because music venues do depend on alcohol sales and they're still trying to recover from the pandemic. So, does Gen Z's drinking present a threat to the live music business? To help answer that question, we have Cat Zhang. She's here. She's an associate editor at Pitchfork who writes a lot about Gen Z cultural trends. And Shawn Creamer, who used to own the Dakota Tavern in Toronto and has managed many music venues. Shawn, Cat, what's good? Welcome to Commotion.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
Thanks for having us.
Of course. Kat, let me start with you. Earlier this month, Billboard published this piece, right? This investigation called Gen Z's Drinking Less and Clubs Aren't Thrilled. That article cites this study from Texas University from 2020 that says that the rate of abstinence among 18 to 22-year-olds is about 30%. That is up 10% from a similar study about 20 years ago. What do you think is driving that particular trend?
I think culturally, there's just a larger conversation about being, quote unquote, sober curious, practicing moderation. Another phrase that comes up is damp lifestyle. So the language of this kind of appeals to people who even want to drink alcohol. It's not a sort of all or nothing thing, but the gist of it is like, look, let's not binge drink. Let's try to figure out ways to incorporate, like a seltzer or a mocktail instead of just having a bunch of alcohol. Sometimes there's kind of a wellness component to the conversation. Influencers being like, why don't you drink my beverage with adaptogens instead of alcohol and things like that. So you can see a lot of these videos on TikTok, and that is kind of influencing the conversation. And then sometimes it's just, people are using other substances. They're smoking more weed or, I think actually cigarettes are back. So, just things like that.
First of all, I'm not much of a drinker, but I am now going to call it a damp lifestyle because that sounds way cooler. Thanks for branding that for me. Kat, how do you think the pandemic affected these changing consumption habits?
Yeah, I think probably at the beginning of the pandemic, there are a lot of people who are drinking pretty heavily just as a way of kind of coping with a sort of anxious situation, and then probably quickly realized that excess was not amazing for them. And so maybe that's where some of the conversation about having a damp lifestyle came in. I think a lot of, TikTok usage has certainly increased during the pandemic. And so maybe, the trends and the language spreads faster. A lot of people talking about having anxiety the night after a party where they don't feel great about what they said because of the alcohol. And so maybe there's something element of cutting back on that.
Right.
And then it, just seems like a lot of beverage makers have also put out more non-alcoholic or low ABV options onto the market. So if you go to any bars these days, or you could get a ton of stuff a Lagunitas Happy Refresher, a Phony Negroni, a Liquid Death. There's more kombucha options than ever. So I think all of these kind of dynamics have been playing out.
Shawn, I was at a concert, an outdoor venue, maybe a couple of weeks ago, and they were selling water, but the brand was called Liquid Death, that it looked like a can of beer. And I was like, who is looking for this water? But you know what? Lots of people are actually like looking to this thing as an alternative. Let's talk about your experience from the other side of the bar. Do these numbers reflect the reality in terms of like how you and your peers are experiencing it?
They certainly do reflect the reality. I mean, alcohol sales have definitely gone down.
Yeah.
And I think the challenge has been for both small businesses and small venues and larger venues alike to come up with alternatives like Cat was saying.
Yeah.
And sometimes giving that experience, I mean, everybody, the traditional rock and roll experience, you go to a concert, you've got a can of beer, all of those things. I think having the water option in a branded can is sort of a way of pivoting into that way of making extra money and finding new revenue streams that fit how the choices that those people are making.
In your experience, are venues sort of pivoting to those options kind of fast enough, do you see? Or is it kind of like if you don't do that, then you just don't sell anything?
Well, I think sometimes smaller venues and small businesses have a hard time pivoting that quickly because they've built their businesses based upon their personality. They've opened up a bar that they want to hang out in, and they see it as this and this and this. Maybe it's beer and whiskey. The Dakota was a lot of beer and whiskey, whereas the Wheat Sheaf had more, younger options that were marketed and geared towards more 22-year-olds like Vizzy or White Claw or things like that. And I think also having those mocktail opportunities for people to branch out to is probably the only way to do it. And I think that if small venues sort of figure those things out, they're going to be able to last a little longer.
That makes sense to me. Yeah. Kat, abstinence is really just one part of the story here, right? There's also a difference between choosing not to drink at all and choosing not to drink at the venue. We're not going to give Gen Z credit for inventing the concept of pre-drinking at home, right? That is just a thing that existed since forever. But what factors would you say are making that idea a bit more attractive these days?
Well, I think it's really expensive to buy a drink at a venue. I went to like a club the other day and it was like $18 for a gin and tonic. And, to even like buy a drink at the club, you had to first like connect your credit card to a wristband. And so you got to go through this process. So it's much easier for me to just be like, I'm not even going to connect my credit card to anything. I'm going to just drink beforehand, or, if it's like a nightclub, maybe you would do a different substance. I think like also sometimes, at concert venues, the range of drinks can be still more limited to like beer, wine, and like tequila soda or something like that. So maybe if you're hanging out with your friends, you would go to a bar before where you could have like a bit more option. And then you would like kind of go to the concert venue, listen to the sort of like hour and a half long set and then go home, or you could go to a different bar or something like that. Yeah.
Shawn, what do you say to someone who's like, hey, why would I pay anyone at a venue $18 for a drink when I'm just going to drink a $2 can at home and then just go to the place?
Well, I think what I would say is $18 is an insane amount of money for a gin and tonic. But what I do think is that people are going and they're supporting the band and they're paying the ticket price and going there. But the problem is if the profit margin for a small business venue is so small and lean as it is, that if people aren't buying their products and helping them make their bottom line, those venues are not going to exist anymore, and you're not going to be able to see those bands in those places anymore. Maybe it'll resurge somewhere else, but we're going to lose a lot of venues if that trend continues.
It's that dire. It's that serious.
It's that serious. Yeah.
Definitely. I'm sort of curious, how the conversation about ticket pricing in general factors into this conversation. There's a lot of talk about like Ticketmaster and sort of like additional fees. I certainly think that it feels to me like the price of tickets has gone up significantly, but I'm not sure how much of that is actually going back to the venue. And so, it's like the tickets seem expensive and then the drinks seem expensive and all of those things maybe.
Like the whole night kind of feels expensive, Shawn, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm actually curious, Shawn, if there's been any change in how venues make money just based on the fact that weed is legal in Canada. I mean, it's not necessarily everywhere in the United States, but how has that impacted this?
Well, I noticed the change there right immediately. So when I had the Hayloft Dance Hall out in Prince Edward County, I owned that.
I love the Hayloft, by
Excellent.
the way. Fantastic venue. But anyway,
so I owned that venue the year before the pandemic opened, and that was the year that they legalized cannabis. And my sales, my Saturday night business was geared towards 20 to 25-year-olds.
Right.
And my sales went down 30% that day.
Just literally that day, that instantly.
Day. Yeah, instantly.
That is, I guess I would be like, that's surprising, but I guess it's not that surprising at all.
No, people were taking edibles and stuff on their way there, and it was challenging for the bar as well because we don't know what you've consumed before you got there. You know, bartenders generally go, I know how much I've served you, or we know what we're serving you, and it became a bit of an issue. But our sales definitely dropped, and they never came back.
Kat, you mentioned the thing about ticket prices, right? Like, so like this idea, like your night is already so expensive before you even go out. But listen, music culture and intoxication have kind of gone hand in hand for like a long time. Like, leave aside the Oasis song we played off the top, but do you sense that this symbiotic kind of relationship between music culture and intoxication is beginning to kind of subside in a way?
Yeah, I think it's on the out. I just think it doesn't seem as cool to be intoxicated anymore because of what I was talking about, you know, people talking about like all the anxiety they have after drinking.
Yeah.
And so because of the popularity of like sober curiousness and stuff like that, you know, it's like not as cool to be intoxicated. But there's also, there's like different substances and different kinds of feelings that maybe people want to chase. And so, it just seems like it might be on the out.
Shawn, last word to you on this. You know, we are contending with a reality where you have a generation that is drinking less than previous generations. And that does, in fact, end up impacting the venues. How can venues adapt to this new normal as they kind of look to the future?
I just think that they have to provide products and things like that they can, like that water product that you were talking about there.
Liquid death.
Yeah, I think that they really need to get in touch with the people that are coming into their venues and ask them what it is that they would like and what they could provide for them that can really help them increase their bottom line so they can keep providing live music to these people for years to come.
I love that we've set up the stakes of this, which is like, if you want to keep supporting live music, you're going to have to support the venues.
Sure.
Where these
and that doesn't
play.
have to be alcohol. That could be merch. Right. That could be merch for the venue. That could be mocktails. That could be any number of things.
Well, thank you, both of you, for supporting my newly adapted damp lifestyle. Shawn, Cat, thank you so much for being here for this conversation. I really appreciate it.
It was a pleasure.
Thanks for having us.
Of course. Cat Zhang is an associate editor at Pitchfork, based in Brooklyn, and Shawn Creamer is general manager at Toronto's iconic concert hall, now known as 888 Young. They were speaking about Gen Z's drinking habits, or I guess lack thereof, and what it means for live music venues. I hope you've had a great time today on our show. Listen, I'm going to be here tomorrow. So if you're going to be here tomorrow, I think we should make a date. I think we should make a plan to meet back here again. My name is Elamin Abdelmahmoud, and I will see you then.